Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep. Uh, Wait a second. Hmm. It's better if I share screen this one. Okay. I think we just need to like admit some people from the waiting room before we formally start. Um, okay. So I think we can start now. Good afternoon, everyone. We are now live in YouTube, and welcome to Work from Home Pythonista. Thank you so much for coming here today. We are your hosts, Zorex,
And Carl.
and we're both volunteers of Python Philippines.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, Zorex. So before we start, I think I would like to give more of an introduction of what Work from Home Pythonista is about. So Work from Home Pythonista is a monthly webinar talk show series where we interview Pythonistas representing various roles and industries to give people in the community an insight of what their typical workday looks like. We like to describe this event or webinar as Pythonistas and their craft at home and beyond. Our format will be in a form of a virtual tour of the speaker's work area at homes and tools. And then throughout the webinar or talk show, we will be having a live Q&A with the host, audience, and everyone essentially.
Yep. Before we start, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Swarm, for making this show possible. They're a strong supporter of communities. For those who don't know, Swarm is the main supporter of the year for Python PH. Their sponsorship allows us as a nonprofit org to continue supporting and facilitating the growth of the community of Python programmers in the Philippines. Also, heads up that we have a coding challenge and we're giving away a book of your choice worth 1,000 pesos from Fully Booked, courtesy of our very generous sponsor, Swarm. So stay tuned at the end of the show for the instructions.
All right. To start, I'll be introducing to you our speaker for today. So our guest for today is Mr. Ivan Dominic Baguio, a senior Python developer and true-blooded Pythonista for more than a decade. His career started when he co-founded a startup that was subsequently acquired by a leading Philippine telecommunications company. Since then, he has worked across all kinds of organizations from a huge corporation to a government agency, software dev shops, and foreign companies. He's currently working as a full stack and lead developer for a foreign SaaS company. He spends his weekends on the outdoors, enjoying activities such as motorcycle touring, wakeboarding, and most recently, kite surfing. Wow, so fun. All right.
So yeah, let's welcome Ivan. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, to be in front of all of you. All right, so should I just start?
Yes.
All
The
right,
floor
let
is
me
yours.
share my here. Can you guys see my screen? Hold
Yep.
on. Okay, let me just fix something. Wait, zoom. There you go. All right. Um, Again, hi everyone. My name is Ivan Baguio. You can call me Ivan. Here's my handler here. It's iBaguio on GitHub. And today I'm going to share to you a day in the life of a Pythonista. I've been, as what Carl introduced, I've been working with Python for more than a decade. Mostly Django web development for more than 7 years of that decade. So yeah, let me just do a quick introduction of myself so you know who I am, my background, and then I can discuss my day-to-day activities and what I do on the weekends as well. All right. So, all right, I grew up in Cebu, so I'm a Bisaya, and yeah, I moved to Manila 2010, I guess, and since then I lived in Manila, Quezon City, Makati, in the last decade. I started programming when I was about 13 years old, and it all started with the easy stuff. Back then, HTML web development was still didn't exist. My first taste of web development was with the really old school HTML. I don't know what version, HTML 1 to whatever. And back then, what the famous feature of HTML was marquee. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it's this feature wherein text will move from right to left on your screen, and it's shining. And in Friend, we used that in Friendster a lot back then. So yeah, it was really fun. And I also played a lot of games, Ragnarok and some online games back then. And I hated, doing the basic work. So I would find hacks, bots online, configure them, program bots. If you guys are also cheat engine, I also had experience hacking memory, like modifying the memory of the game to get more money or to get more gold or whatever. So it's more of a gave me a good understanding of how computer memory worked back then. Yeah, and I had my computer science degree in UP Diliman. I on my fourth year, I was under the computer cyber security group or computer security group laboratory, and I had the pleasure of participating in a student conference hosted by Kaspersky. I don't think they do that these days. I think the last one was 2013, 2014, and after that, I don't think they've hosted any more of those conferences. And yeah, I was able to participate in the Singapore and London. I represented the Philippines in London. In Singapore, it was more of a regional round, so there were a couple of Filipinos as well, some Chinese, Hong Kong guys, Japanese guys, something like that. So this was really the start of my, I guess, career, because this was a really huge bump in terms of my confidence. And like when I was applying, like when I talk to people and I say, oh yeah, I participated in a conference and I kind of kicked ass there. They gave me some sort of an award, and people were like, wow, that's really cool. So it was a good experience as well. um I consider myself as an autodidact. If you're not familiar with this word, what it basically means is someone who is self-taught and self-taught, like you learn by yourself. I wouldn't suggest everyone to be an autodidact because it's faster to teaching you, to be honest. So if you have a mentor, or if you know someone who you can uh, uh, like talk to a person and ask them, hey, can you be my mentor, and this person has more knowledge than you, I would suggest going this route in terms of career development because it's faster. I've been using Python since around 2012. Before that, I was using Java, C, some PHP, and my first experience with web development was with PHP for about a year. And when I learned about Python, I said, nah, sorry, PHP is not for me. And I never went back since. I also have an old repository in my GitHub, which is public. It's Django DragonPay. If you're not familiar with DragonPay, it's one of the older payment gateways here in the Philippines. They've been around for quite a while. And years back, I was working on a startup company and we needed some integration with DragonPay. And no one, like most of these days, if you want to integrate with a payment provider, they have their own SDKs, but DragonPay back then didn't have. So I just wrote my own and made it public. And I didn't really uh, expect people to use this, but there were times that people were messaging me and saying, "Hey, we have integration with DragonPay. We're using Django. We're using your open source package," and it was just cool and fun as well. I am also a sort of a mentor. I have a couple of devs that I teach in their career and help them grow. Most of these are my friends or someone that I've worked with in the past. The first guy I've mentored, he was my intern sort of in Smart, and he was really a good student and developer. And so I gave him my attention, taught him, helped him grow. And yeah, that was kind of a success story for me because within 3 years or within like 4 years, he was earning six digits and um, he didn't have a bachelor's degree. He got a 3-year degree, worked for 1 year, and then took another year to get the bachelor. But within a few years, he was uh, making a lot of money, and I tried to hire him for one of my projects, and I was like, "Oh man, you're so expensive now. I can't hire you anymore." So yeah. All right. So my career, I started as a technical co-founder for Wi-Fi Nation back in 2013. I was still a graduating student in UP Diliman. And this company was acquired by PLDT Smart sometime in 2015. So the company was bought by Smart, and then I worked with Smart as the lead Wi-Fi developer for about 3 years. If you have been to public places, airports, and in the airport, NAIA, you open up your Wi-Fi and you see like Smart Wi-Fi. That was us back then. I'm not sure if it's still active these days, but if you see something like Smart Wi-Fi and in your browser or on your phone, something pops up and say, "Hey, please log in," type your mobile number, blah blah blah. So that was one of my projects with Smart, and I was the lead developer for that. And then I also started a company with some of my friends back then. It was Pahiram.me. It was a lending platform. That did not go very well, to be honest, but it was a really good experience for me. I learned a lot with this, and left that. I became a consultant for the government for about a year for FDA. I learned a lot about the government, how it works, all the bureaucracy, and I've also realized why the government IT infrastructure sucks. Working with the government, so I don't want to discuss that, but um, let's just say working with the government is really like service. Like you really have to program your mind that, hey, I'm helping the country here. It's not like I'm working for money. Um, and since around 2018, 2019, I've been a web developer for foreign companies. I'm a senior full stack developer, and I'm also a sort of a team lead. I have a couple people under my belt that I manage, and um, yeah, that kind of stuff. And mostly for the past 4 years, it's full time Django related work. React JS, Vue.js on the front end as well, but I'm mostly a back end full stack back end developer, if that makes sense. So I can code front end, but most of the time, like 80% of the time, I'm on the back end, working on the back end and some infrastructure as well. All right, so day in my life. Um, it's a bit boring, to be honest. Like there's nothing really spectacular about the day. I usually wake up 8, 9 a.m. First thing I do, my work desk is literally just beside my bed. So when I wake up, turn on the lights, boot the PC. I sometimes have breakfast or sometimes just working. Like from wake up to working, that's just 3 minutes. I'm already working. Um, I don't. I usually don't have an alarm, and I don't force myself to wake up if I didn't have enough sleep. The reason is I couldn't work productively, or I don't get the focus when I lack the sleep. So I would rather sleep in and wake up 12 noon if I have to, rather than wake up 8 a.m. force myself 8 a.m. and then when I'm working I'm just there not focused. Okay, so the first few hours of that, for 1 hour, I usually just check Slack notifications, you do some code review, light work, just building my day up. And from 10 a.m. to around 2 p.m., that's when I start writing code, reviewing tasks for other guys in the team, um, sometimes doing code reviews as well for this time. And these days, what I do is I do a lot of testing and uh, just tech debt maintenance stuff. Not a lot of builds because the company has been growing and the past few months, and when you're in that pace, you get a lot of tech debts that you really have to pay, or else it will make your life very, very ugly. So I have lunch at around past 2 p.m. Sometimes I have lunch at around 12, but most of the time it's after 2 p.m. because of the meetings. And then from 2 p.m. onwards, that's really when I start my focused work because I have hours of just dedicated work, no meetings or no distractions from anyone. And yeah, at around 9 p.m., that's when I start to prepare for dinner. Sometimes I skip dinner if I forget. When you're in the zone, uh, it's easy to eating, to be honest, and continue working until midnight. So I work a lot, like literally a lot, for maybe, I don't know, 15, 14 hours a day, maybe even more sometimes. I work for that long. I have projects that I work, so that's why I work this number of hours. And I just like working. I've been doing this for the past couple of years, like working for at least 10 hours a day. So I don't think there's a day where I work less than 10 hours unless I'm sick or something. So it's not like, some people when they work 8 hours, they're like, pagod na ako, I want to quit my job. For me, it's really not work, and I enjoy a lot of the work. And especially when there's something I'm working on that is new, like I'm building a new sort of a framework, or I'm organizing code refactoring, and I'm just really, really using the brain. It's not work for me. And every time I create a new pull request on some of my projects, and the pull request, I like, there's this code that's really interesting that I built, a refactor, or I made things faster, optimization. And I'm just excited to share it to some of my colleagues as well, and tell them, hey, um, I did this refactor, and I built this sort of reusable code. I'm really into that, building reusable code. Check this out, and I'll be like, I'll ping them, hey, review my code, please review, like, please like my code. Yeah, that's it so far. I think I can answer a few questions at this point, or if no, yeah, okay, we can just have it at the end of the talk. All right, moving on. So yeah, I do a lot of code reviews, meeting, planning and backlog management, bug fixing, tech debt reduction. So when you're working with a company and when you just start working, mostly your priority is building features, especially if you're a junior or mid engineer. Once you get to the higher level of being an engineer, your problems are less on the day-to-day programming. It will be very, like, 90% of the problems programming will be easy for you to solve because you've solved most of them. It's more on the future thinking that you will have to be that will be your problem most of the time. More on documentation. How can I support my team in terms of making it faster? So I'm not sure if you've heard of this terminology, the 10x programmer, or the 10 times programmer, which is the concept wherein a programmer who is 10 times better than the rest of the team. It's, for me, it's really impossible to become 10 times more better or more effective. But for me, the concept of being a 10x programmer, and whatever x programmer is, to be able to um, be a multiplier for your team. So let's say you're 5 guys in the team, right? You work 8 hours and a day. Let's just say you work 8 hours a day, and uh, the productivity of each person is 1x. Okay. And if you're that kind of programmer who makes things better for others, for yourself and for others, creates value, and let's just say you write some framework code or tools in your company that will make everyone be 20% more productive. So now you're adding 20% more to the output of your team, which is, let's say, 8 hours a day times 5, that's 40. So 20% of 40, that's another basically one day. You're like you're adding one more guy to your team in terms of man hours because of the impact you're doing. So for me, that's what becoming a ex programmer is. You're able to help your team, um, and become more effective. If you can help your team, have 2 times more output in the same number of hours, then you basically double your team size, right? And for me to do that, you need a lot of documentation, unit testing, and as well as knowledge sharing. So I do a lot of these. If I discover something new, I'll be like, huddle, call all of the engineers, and I learned something new. This is so cool. Let's discuss this. 30 minutes, 1 hour, and people will instantly learn something new. You know. Yeah, that's it. So workstation. All right. My primary workstation is a PC running on Ubuntu 2104. It has 32 gig of RAM. It has 16 CPUs, 8 cores. Basically, it's pretty fast. I've never had issues with it in the past, except for some memory issues. My memory stick died, but whatever. My secondary workstation is a MacBook, and this is the computer that I use when I travel, when I move around a bit. It's not as powerful as my primary workstation, so when I'm using my MacBook, it's more on light work. I don't do a lot of builds and compilations. I offload that to the to the servers. Um, so yeah, and for my equipment, so for my keyboard, I invested heavily on this keyboard. It's a Kinesis Advantage QD, or a QWERTY Dvorak. It's a split type mechanical keyboard. So this is just absolutely amazing. I've had this for about more than a year, maybe. And when I'm typing, my hands is just like this. I don't even have to move around. It's just literally like this. When you're usually typing on a normal keyboard, when you do a backspace or enter, you do like this kind of action, right? You reach for the backspace. But for this keyboard, the backspace is in the thumb. Space bar and backspace is here. So it's really good. It helps your ergonomic, your hands to not be strained. Even you can do 24 hours coding, writing here, and you will not have a problem. The only thing here is this is a bit expensive. I think I bought this for around $300 plus shipping. So like, let's say 20,000 pesos plus landed here in the Philippines. They don't sell this here. It is expensive for a keyboard. My previous keyboard was like 1,000 pesos, but it only lasted a year. And this one, it's been a year plus already. I've accidentally dropped cereals and water in this, and I was able to clean it up. No damage, no issues. It's very durable, and based on the reviews, it could last for about more than 10 years. So it's a really good investment, I would say. Next, I have the stand-up desk thing, and so this is not really a desk. It's more of a table thing you put on top of the desk. So if you change your desk, you can just bring this and put it into another desk. It's very portable. I bought this in HMR a couple of years ago, probably like 3-4 years ago. And it's a really good investment, because if you're sitting all day working for 14-15 hours, it's really gonna take a toll on your health. And I like to I'm an active person, so I don't like sitting that much. I try to not gain weight if I can, and standing really helps on that. Yeah, so I also invested in an ergonomic chair, so I can sit here all day and I will not have any back problems. So yeah, it's really good to invest in your gear as a programmer, because this is basically your life, right? And if it will make you comfortable and make you more effective, then go for it. Even if it's a bit pricey, these things last for years if you take great care of them. So my headphones is a JBL Quantum 800. The reason I really like this headphones is that it has this microphone wherein if I flip it up, it just mutes, right? So I don't have to press the mute button on Slack or Zoom. So if I bring hear me if it's down. So you know you're in a meeting. Sometimes I'm cooking and I'm in a meeting. I can just flip it up. I mute when I want to talk. I bring it down, right? So it's a very good headset. And here are some pictures of my workstation. It's a bit messy, to be honest. I'm not the cleanest person. So here's my keyboard. I have my Mac there, and I have two monitors. One is curved, the other one is not. On the right, that's my primary monitor. I have a Rubik's Cube that I tried to learn a couple of months ago, but I stopped learning and I just play around with it. I have some sticky notes. And yeah, so here's my keyboard again. And here's my desk on the standing position, sort of. Right. So there's a button here on the right, if you can see in the right corner. For my cameras, I have a Logitech camera. It died after a year, so it was a bit expensive. It was like 1,000 pesos, and when it died on me, I was like, no, I don't want to spend another 1,000 pesos for a camera that's just gonna last for a year. So I decided to buy the cheap China one that's like 200 pesos, and it sucks. Like the the I don't know, the display, the video for this, the one the right camera, it's really bad. So right now I'm using my MacBook camera, which is decent enough. But for most of the meetings, I don't mind having a pixelated face, really. So that's the reason why I have two cameras there. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so moving on. So weekends. I try to have work-life balance these days. Previously, a couple of years ago, I did not have work-life balance. I was on weekends, I would be crunching code, writing code, studying for maybe a couple of years. For at least 5 years, I was really like, work Monday to Sunday. Sometimes go out, but most of the time I'll be working. But these days, I try to enjoy my life and try to enjoy the fruits of my labor. So I started riding motorcycle around 2018. I have a big bike, so I traveled to a lot of places already in the Philippines, mostly in Luzon. So I've been in Vigan. I've been to Cebu from Manila 3 times already. So as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Cebu, so I go home to Cebu via motorcycle sometimes. So I ride to Laguna, Quezon, Bicol. From Bicol, I jump to Masbate and then to Cebu. So it's a really good experience. Here are some of my photos of me riding a motorcycle. Yeah, I've been to Leyte, Samar, Batangas, Laguna. And my goal in the near future would be to do the Philippine Loop. So if you guys are not familiar, Philippine Loop is when you basically travel around the Philippines in about 1 month. So you start wherever and then you go the entire you go around the entire Philippines. So that's my goal soon. And it's cheaper to do that on a motorcycle. You can probably do that in less than like 50,000 pesos. For all the gas, transportation costs, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So I ride a Versus 650. It's a police bike. And other hobbies. So recently I've started doing some water sports. I used to do wakeboarding and then I discovered kite surfing. Wakeboarding, I do this in Deca or in Batangas, but most of the time it's in Deca Clark because it's just 2 hours away, around 1.5 hour, 2 hours away. And the reason why I like wakeboarding is it's a full body workout. So if you do 2 hours of wakeboarding, for the next week your body will be sore, biceps, chest, neck, everything. So it's a full body workout and you have fun. So it's not like when you go to the gym, sometimes you do some reps. It's boring when you're in the gym. It gets very repetitive. And for wakeboarding, there's a lot of progression you can do. You start at falling down all the time, and then you can start doing tricks, and you can do like hardcore tricks. And every time I do a session of wakeboarding, it's always a workout for me. Like my body is just sore, and I really like it. That means like my body was used, and yeah. For kite surfing, this one's similar to wakeboarding, but you have some sort of a kite or a parachute thing that pulls you in the water. So all you need is wind, and you don't need a machine to pull you. So for wakeboarding, you need the machine cable park to pull you, right? You have to go to the cable park. For kite surfing, anywhere, any beach that has strong winds, you can already, pump your kite, fly your kite, and start doing tricks. So I was in El Nido 2 weeks ago, and the photos here on the right was actually there in El Nido. It was super, super fun. I did a couple of tricks, jumping on the water, and it's just absolutely amazing. And aside from that, I have a dog. His name is Bash, and these are some of the photos of my dog. So working from home, sometimes it gets a bit lonely, especially if you live alone. And I would really suggest people or like programmers get a pet, like a dog or a cat or whatever. So my pet Bash, he's really very malambing, and like he wants to have attention a lot, and he's a very good uh, company. So I also bring him on some of my rides. Uh, yeah, he rides a motorcycle. I tie him in the back. So I brought him to Cebu already. I don't know, where have we been. I think I brought him in Pampanga, Laguna, Angas, Tagaytay. Yeah, so he's been with me. He's adventurous dog as well. So here in the lower right, you can see him. Here's a photo with him in Caliraya, where I was also doing some kite surfing. So yeah. All right, tools. So these days, these are just the main tools that I use in terms of productivity and work tools. Oh my Zish, it's like a bash terminal interpreter shell. So if you're working with Python and maybe web development, I would suggest you use Oh my Zish and Zish. The reason is it has lots of helpers, and the main functionality that I benefit from this tool is that it shows you your current virtual env. So with Python, you're working on different projects. Each project has its own virtual env, or different kinds of requirements. You will see what virtual env you are in, and when you're typing, right? So you don't have to check, am I in a virtual env, or what Python version am I using, or whatever, right? So that's Zish. And I also suggest everyone to learn aliases for Git if you're a Git user, as well as Bash, right? So for Git aliases and Git helpers, I have a repository under my Git account. It's public. You can check it out. Throughout the last few years, I've learned a lot in terms of how to make the workflow faster, how to make your work faster, right? So the first thing that I suggest people do is alias your Git with the letter G. So instead of typing git git, you can just use the letter G as your Git, right? If you're not familiar with aliases, basically it's substituting a command with another sort of command. Okay, and I think everyone in my team uses Git aliases and Git helpers. For the helpers, these are some of the common Git workflows or combination of commands that we use on a day-to-day. So for example, if you're working on a ticket, if you're familiar with Jira, if you're working on a ticket, most of the ticket names are numbers, right? Like ABC 123, that's your ticket number. And most of the workflow would be that your branch name is your ticket number. So if you're implementing a feature that's related to a ticket number, your branch name is also the same as the ticket number, so that it's easier to find the branch for that ticket. And so if you want to switch tickets, branches with a ticket name, I created this helper where you just type in the ticket number, and Git will automatically look for the perfect match for that. So instead of typing git checkout, ABC 123, you can just type git checkout 123, and it's gonna find for ABC one. It's gonna do some regex matching. It really makes your workflow faster, makes you more productive as a programmer. And you also have bash aliases, and just generally anything that helps you automate the boring stuff. So working with Python, I do a lot of Python manage py run server, Python manage py migrate, all of these commands related to Django. And these are like, I don't know, 20 characters to type on your keyboard. So, and you use this all the time, like every day you type these commands. So what we do is we create aliases or functions for these. So for example, Python manage py shell is just pys on my alias, or Python manage py migrate is pym, something like that. So uh, anything that you do on a day-to-day basis that you're typing, long characters, trim it down, create an alias, master these alias. So instead of typing 20 characters, 25 characters, you just need to type 3-4 characters. Okay. So next tool I use is Timox, or the terminal multiplexer. For you guys who are also in web development or just in general working in the terminal, most junior engineers, or you're just starting out, when you're working with multiple shells or terminal tabs, what I see is you have multiple terminals or tabs, so like terminal 1, terminal 2, terminal 3, and you alt tab, or click on the tab on top and you change your tab, right? So with terminal multiplexer, maybe I don't know if I can show you this, but you can just Google this. It's Tmox. You basically have just one screen, and you can change your terminal via commands. You can divide your screen into 4. You can zoom in, zoom out, and one of the features here that's very useful is that it has the concept of sessions. So let's say you're running your Django application, or you're running a web server in your terminal. You accidentally click close your terminal. If you're not running some sort of a session management for your terminal, your run server will die, or your Python whatever application will die. But if you have Tmox, you close your terminal, you can just open another terminal, reconnect to the session, and it's still there running. It's like it's saved on the background. Another tool I use a lot is HTOP. It's just a server management thing. It's like your task manager. It shows you how much CPU you're using, memory you're using. It's very useful for server management or just Linux management. And then for text editor, I use Sublime Text and Vim. I tried using the Python, PyCharm. Sometimes I use the Visual Basic Studio, but for most of my work, I just use Sublime Text with a lot of automations. Right, so I just configured my Sublime Text to some scripts or something like that. And yeah, and also for Vim, I would suggest everyone learn Vim if you can. It's just a great tool to know generally for a programmer. You don't need to learn it, but it's gonna help your life a lot. And I'm just gonna add here. So sound switcher indicator. This is for Linux. Most of the issues we have when we have meetings online with Zoom is when you connect. Sometimes it's using a different microphone. So you have a headphone, you have a microphone here, but when you connect to Zoom, it's using your PC microphone or your laptop microphone, and you don't it's hard to switch that. So this tool just makes it easy for me to switch between what input or output I'm using in terms of audio. So if my headphones battery dies out, I just connect to a wire and then switch very quickly using this tool. All right, moving on. So I think before I end my talk, I just have a few principles and ideas I'd like to share with everyone in terms of, hopefully these can help you in growing your career, okay? And first would be to be lazy and to be dry. If you're not familiar with the dry principle, it's one of the concepts that Python has. I'm not sure if concept is the right term, but Python kind of implements this. What it means is do not repeat yourself. And this goes hand in hand in being lazy, right? So being lazy here is not being lazy like don't work, sleep your ass all day, go just be in bed or whatever. What it means is try not to repeat yourself. So I already mentioned earlier, like if you have commands that you use every day, 20 characters, create aliases, shorten them down to 4 characters. If you're doing something over and over again, and it's like a menial task, think for a second, step back and try to think, how can I automate this? How can I make my life better? One example here would be a lot of functionality with Sublime Text. So with Sublime Text, you have this multiple cursor feature. Some text editors also have this. But let's say you highlight a let's say you want to replace a specific variable. You have a variable name called whatever is your variable name, and it exists in one file, and you want to change all of the occurrence of variable name in that file. Some people, what they do is just Control F variable name, and then uh, change it one by one. That's the very brute force way to do it. Or you can do a search and replace, which is also good. But Sublime Text offers a multiple cursor feature wherein when you type something, it types on multiple lines at the same time. This is one of those things that will make your life make you more productive per se. Okay, so yeah, as much as possible, try to be lazy. Keep this in mind that if you're doing something repetitive day in day out, you've been doing this, it's boring. Search for a way to automate it. It's just more of a preference that I use Sublime Text. I never had the time to learn and set up VS Code or PyCharm, and Sublime Text has been working for me for the past couple of years. So I didn't have the motivation to change it. And I guess Sublime Text is a bit lighter. It's closer to a normal text editor than it is to an IDE. Okay, so next principle would be KISS, which means keep it short and simple. There's this saying in terms of optimization that says premature optimization is the root of all evil. As much as possible, just try to make things simple. Don't overthink things. When you have a problem, you don't need to think of a lot of edge cases for that problem. Solve one problem at a time. Keep everything simple. You don't have to make things complicated. This goes for writing code as well. If you can, make your code simple for others to read and for yourself to read. I've written a lot of code in the past wherein I like writing complex code, and it makes me feel good. Oh, I'm so good. I was able to write, use this Python feature, this blah, blah, blah stuff. 2 months later, I'll be like, I don't understand this feature. Like, who wrote this code, right? The person who wrote this code, he had to be very smart, but I couldn't understand it, In a way, it's bad. So when I do a git blame, I'll be like, that makes sense. I wrote this 2 months ago. So that has happened to me a lot of times. Sometimes not even 2 months. 1 week later, I'll be like, what the hell does this code do? So to make everything simple, don't use complex stuff. Or if you use complex Python features or complex programming concepts, just imagine that someone more junior than you will read this. And so add a lot of documentation. Adding comments does not make your program slower. It doesn't affect your code basically, but it makes it more maintainable. So yeah, keep everything simple. Well, verbose documentation. When you're writing documentation, the thing is, everything's already in your mind. Like in your mind, it's like, this is very. It already makes sense. Like I don't have to explain what's happening here because when you look at the code, it makes sense, right? In your current state, on how you think right now. But promise you, 1 week, 1 month from now, even if you wrote that code and you will forget what that code meant or what you were thinking at the time. So what I always try to do is when I write a code, especially if there's some complex thing going on, write all of the notes there, like, hey, take a look at this code. These are the things that I was thinking when I was writing this code. These are the other code that you need to know to be able to understand this code, especially if it's highly abstractized code, like you're using a lot of other classes or we're using code. So as much as possible, be very verbose in your documentation. This will really help you in terms of debugging in the future, or if someone jumps in, reads your code, they will really appreciate you for this. Yeah. Right. So next principle is time is gold. Very classic. Everyone has heard of this. But what this means for me is that, well, what I can share is that let's just say to become very good at something, you have to do it over and over again. Makes sense. If you want to learn the guitar, play the guitar for a lot of time. If you want to learn a sport, learn a sport for a long time, right? And it's same for programming in general, that the more time you spend programming, the more you become better at it. And let's say I mentioned that I work a lot, more than 10 hours a day. And if you do a basic math, in my 1 year of working, I've probably gained 1.5 years of experience. So if you say, oh, I'm an engineer with 1 year of experience, but I've been working 15 hours a day, technically you've gained 1.5 years of experience in that time span. In 1 year, you've gained 1.5 years experience because you've spent more time programming, solving more problem, and stuff like that. So if you're on your early phase of your career, you're a junior engineer, a couple of years, under the belt. Even if you're a senior engineer, I would still suggest you spend all of your time or most of your time that you can working on side projects, learning something new, and don't waste your time. And so there is this 10,000 hours principle wherein to be really good at something, you need to spend 10,000 hours, right? And let's say, I don't want to like do an actual math, but let's say you work 8 hours a day and your total in 1 year you work, let's just say 1,000 hours, just to make the math easy. In 1 year, you work 1,000 hours. If you work more than 8 hours a day, let's say you work 14 hours a day, which is 1.5, you work 1,500 hours in a year. So to become really good at something, you need approximately 10,000 hours. That means instead of waiting for 10 years to be an expert on that thing, you now need less than 10 years, right? So that's the principle here. And what I did in my career way back was to cut everything that spent time that's kind of useless. So I used to work in Makati. I lived in Quezon City. The commute was 1 hour one way, and that's already 2 hours one day, right? So imagine in that 2 hours, I could have already worked or learned something. Multiply that by 1 year. That's lots of hours, So these small things, I decided that I would rather pay rent in Makati than commute waste 2 hours. Even if it's expensive to live closer to my office, my time is more valuable than how much I pay for rent or whatever. So all of these small things I did, like whatever time saving that you can do, and then you can focus more on your work or learning. Focus on that and try to add more hours to your practice. So programming, just like any other skill in the world, it's just a matter of how much time you put into it. If you work 4 hours a day and the rest of the day you're just playing games or doing something that's not really adding value to your career or to your knowledge, it's gonna add up. So there was this guy I worked with way back. He was about almost 10 years older than me, like 9 years older than me, and he was reporting to me. So at the time I was like 24 years old, and I have this 30 years old guy reporting to me. And I don't want to brag, but this guy doesn't have half the skills I had back then. And the reason for that was he had like 10 years experience with web development, but in that 10 years, it's not really 10 years of experience. He hasn't really grown in that 10 years. Whereas I had 3 years in experience, but my 3 years is like hardcore experience. Monday to Sunday, I'm working on a project, I'm coding, something like that. Although this is something that not everyone can do. We have families, we have responsibilities, we have life, and I guess I was just lucky in a position wherein I don't have a family to feed. I'm not a breadwinner. I just have myself to focus on and grow, right? So if you can invest in yourself, if you don't have responsibilities, especially when you're younger, invest in yourself. Invest in your knowledge, in your brain. Yeah, because when you grow up and you have more responsibilities, you wouldn't be able to do these things anymore, right? So some other advice: prioritize growth over pay. When I started working, when I was in college, I was earning maybe like 2,000 pesos every week, 1 week, 2 weeks. So I started as like a freelancer, on freelancer.com or whatever online platform that I could just do. I was doing web scraping, and even if I felt like I was underpaid, but I couldn't get any other job, like I want to earn this much, but no one's paying me this much, so I have no choice. I just have to take whatever I can. Yeah, so I started with around 2,000 and then move on to like 4,000 pesos a month salary. But for me, it's not about the salary. As long as I was able to eat and I was able to learn, I was growing a lot back then. I didn't care. right? I was happy with that amount of money. Yeah, and in this industry, I think everyone knows the pay for really good engineers is really lucrative. Um, I could not emphasize that more, especially if you have more than one project, like you're working on 2 or more projects, you can really earn a lot of money. Right. So repetition is the mother of skill. So if you keep on doing something over and over again, it becomes second nature to you. So the more you learn, the more you program, the more you hone your skills, the more you become better at it. I would also suggest for people to find a mentor, and anyone that is just way above them in terms of technical knowledge. So not just, if you want to learn Python, find someone who's very good at Python. If you want to learn whatever language, try to find someone or join groups, join conference. I used to join a lot of what do you call this, hackathons back then. Like every hackathon I can join, I would join, and one motivation was the prize. Like most of the hackathons, I would be one, either first, second, third place, and I would really aim to do that. But there were also some hackathons that um, I did not get any prize or something. But these hackathons are really good experiences. For a mentor, most of this, you can probably find a mentor in your company. So most senior engineers I know would be very much happy to help out junior engineers if they want to learn something, right? All you have to do is just reach out. Hey, man, I really want to grow. I really want to learn. I need someone to guide me. Do you mind being my mentor? And I guess most senior engineers will appreciate, will want to help you, because if you're really very forthcoming and you have the social skills and you're not a shitty programmer, then yeah, people will want to help you. But if you're I've worked with I've worked with shitty people as well, and there are just people that I don't want to help really, because they haven't invested the time to help themselves, and it would just be a waste of my time to help you, right? So yeah, find a mentor, um, and this will really help you out in your career. Don't hesitate to ask questions. So if you're a junior mid engineer, um, I would suggest you ask a lot of questions. If you don't understand anything, it doesn't it it doesn't you don't have to pay, or like it doesn't cost you to ask questions. If you don't understand anything, ask someone to explain it to you if they have the time, but also be respectful if they don't have the time. Like the more you ask questions, the more it opens you to more concepts that you can learn in the future. And having a mentor and asking questions cuts a lot of time in terms of discovery period. So as I mentioned earlier, I consider myself an autodidact. I did not have a mentor myself, like a senior, partly because I guess of my ego back then. I'm like, oh, magaling ako, I don't need a mentor. And it took me a lot of time to learn certain things. Whereas if a mentor would just have taught you, hey, this concept, this is the idea, study this, the person will direct you exactly in what you need to know. You don't have to go through all of that discovery, trial and error, just figure out a concept, which saves you a lot of time. So yeah, find a mentor. Yeah. Lastly, I would suggest everyone have their own side projects. So if you have a day job and you have some extra time, find a side project. Either find a freelance job, or if you can't find a freelance job, go to some online course, side project, whatever. Learn something new. Just work on something on the side. Throughout my career, I've always worked on at least 2 projects. Like I have a main job and a side project. Uh, on work, right? And what this has done to me is that it has solidified that knowledge in my mind, because after work I would still do some Python stuff or some side project. And sometimes when you're working on something on your main job, it gets boring. Like day in, day out, it's the same. You're not learning anything new. When you're not learning anything new, you should try to have another side project for you to learn something. And I myself, I sometimes suggest this even to my people, like some companies, they don't want you to work on side project because, oh, I want you to focus on my company as well. My principle is that if you work on a side project, the learnings you have on that side project might be of value to our company, right? And it has happened to me a lot. Like, I have a side project, I learned something new. Oh, this is really interesting and cool. Let me apply this to my current company or my current other job. And so it really helps out on these projects. And I guess yeah, so I think this is my last slide. Invest on your tools. I've shown you a lot of my workstation. These things are really expensive, but again, it's worth it. If you want to be really good at what you do, you need to make yourself very comfortable, very productive, very fast in what you do, and you have to invest in the tools. Invest in yourself in terms of skills, knowledge. Yeah, this is really the best, I guess, advice is just focus on yourself. The great thing about this industry and this career, being a programmer, is you don't need anything except a computer and your brain. Okay, everything is in here. If your computer dies, your equipment dies, you can just get a new one. Everything is in here, and no one can steal that from you. It's not like, I don't know, you have a company, someone shuts down your company, like a physical store or whatever, where they can steal something from you. No one can steal what you have in here. Okay, and that value you will have for the rest of your life. So I've worked with someone who's like 40 plus years old, close to 50 years old, and he started learning programming when he was in his 30s, not even out of his like out of college. He graduated computer science, IT, engineering, whatever. No, he started programming around 30 plus years old, or near close to 40s, and at the age of around close to 50, he is very good for the experience he has, right? Like 10 years ago, I would say, oh, if you're 50 years old and you're still a programmer, you would probably be out of date anymore. I've met a lot of people like that as well. Like in their 40s, 50s, they haven't learned new technologies and they're outdated. But yeah, once you keep investing in yourself, it's gonna last till your deathbed. And lastly, English is key. For you to get a role in a foreign company, like an international company, you have to be very close to be fluent with English. Because if you cannot, you might have all of the technical skills, like you're very good in programming, a lot of concepts, blah blah blah. But if you cannot explain yourself and project confidence to your client or to whoever you're working on, they won't trust you that you have the necessary skills, and you can't talk, like explain your ideas, right? So growing up, I grew up in Cebu, and Cebu is more of a English rather than Tagalog province. So when I was growing up, I did not know how to speak Tagalog. I would speak English in school or something like that. So that really helped me a lot. For here in Manila, I've noticed most of the people speak Tagalog in school, and English is not really very solid, I guess, for most people. And that's one of the challenges that people get in this industry when you're trying to get a remote job from a foreign company, because local companies don't pay as much as the international companies. Like it's just a fact. It's a fact. And so if you can't land yourself a international foreign company because your English is not very good, then that it's too bad for you. You're a very good programmer, you know a lot of things, but you can't explain yourself, you can't connect to the client, you can't project confidence to the client, they won't hire you. And I guess that's it. If you want to reach out, here are my socials, Facebook, or you can email me. Feel free to do that if you have any more questions. Yeah, I think I can answer your questions.
Yeah, that's really rad, Ivan. So that's the work-life balance that I want to achieve. Because
it's actually work balance.
I mean, all of the things you do is extreme. Like your battle station, like it's really cool and it's functional. Your hobbies, I think I we can say that those are extreme sports. Also, your working habits, yeah, that's extreme. Um, yeah, before we proceed to the Q&A, I guess I'm gonna uh, do some quick shout outs to our YouTube viewers and participants. In Zoom, we have 38 participants, and in YouTube, I think we have like 8 average viewers. And the people in chat in YouTube said hi to Bash earlier, and they greeted them happy birthday. Yeah. Yeah. Veronica said that you celebrated
Yeah,
his
it's my
birthday today.
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. So I guess first question is from Mr. Valdez. This question is asked earlier in the talk. He asked, being the zone is so important enough to have late food sometimes. So his question was, do you have a recommended brain food to get into the zone, or when skipping food?
Good question. Thank you so much for this question, Mr. Valdez, sir. I really admire your work. For food, honestly, I don't have much time to prepare food. I'm in my desk working most of the time. So when I either just order, buy food, or whatever's available. I eat like I don't know, uh, potato chips. My food habits is not very healthy because I don't focus on that. I don't spend a lot of time cooking. Sometimes I'm in a meeting or I'm working. I'm in the zone and I forgot. Oh my god, I'm hungry. I need to eat, but I'm still in the zone. So I just open the air fryer, throw in whatever I can find. Fries, bangus, whatever that's really easy to cook, and just eat it. For me, it's just that try to lessen your rice. In the past, I would eat a lot of rice, like 2, 3 cups of rice, especially white rice, and that will make you very sleepy. Like once you fill your tummy with rice, after that, man, you would want to sleep. So I eat brown rice these days. And yeah, that's it. Not very picky on food.
Yep.
All right, cool. I guess I'll be the one to ask one more question as well. So I think before I ask the question, of course, I would like to say that I also am a bit amazed of that word schedule at the past. Um, what I can say is I think I have in a way somewhat of a similar work life at the moment, if we can consider
That's
it as
good.
a work life. But yeah, I guess the reason why I stated that is that to redirect to this question actually asked by one of our viewers in Zoom, which is Kini Lopez. So actually, she has 3 questions. No? But I'll go with the first one. So the first one is, how different is your current daily routine compared to your life while studying in college? Were you always this productive, working for 10 hours a day? And then she would like to say that it's kudos to you. No? I guess I would like to add something to this as well, as a follow-up question to that person. Um, yeah, like how different really was it? Like, were you really focusing on a lot of side projects and a lot of like, how were you even like multitasking from academics and side projects, which I want to know since actually I'm also a student as well. So
Okay. Thank you for this question, Kenny. This is a very, very good question. I can see your question here on Zoom. Way back in college, so first year I was really very studious because I was in UP Mindanao in Davao on my first year, and I really wanted to transfer to Diliman. And to transfer to Diliman, you need to have good math grades, right? So I was very studious, and I was able to get the basic math, the first math subject. I was able to uno that subject, and because of that, I was able to transfer to Diliman. Now, when I was in Diliman, my goal was just to learn a lot. Not really. I don't care if my grades. I don't care about my grades, right? All I cared about is learning, right? I don't care if my grades are low. As long as I pass and go on with life. Um, I had a lot of side projects as well when I was in college. Whatever I could think of, like I had a project way back, like I had lots of books in college and I wanted to sell them. So I made it a web platform for college students to sell their books. Right? That was one of my first web project. And that's where I learned how to use that's where I started my web development career. I just thought of something. I want to do this. Let's do it. Right. And I already had this principle way back, like the 10,000 hours I was talking to you. You know, I, as much as possible, I tried to use my time very wisely. I played some games here and there, but it's not like, I spent all day just playing or not being productive. As much as possible, I try to be productive. And my main motivation back then really was, I know this will pay off. Wait for 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I know this will pay off in terms of financially, like, because I already had an idea of how much programmers were making back then. And back then, I was reading blogs of, you know, even like Europeans, and they're making like this amount of money. I'm like, wow, if I earn this amount of money, imagine my life. I would be, whatever. Back then, earning like 1,000 a week, or like your allowance, this amount of money was really like my motivation. And yeah, so there were times I had friends, roommates in college, they'd be like, "Oh, pare, punta tayo ng Timog, party tayo, inom tayo." I'd be like, "Sorry, bro. I'll be coding tonight." And I could not forget this. I had an argument with my roommate back then because he wanted to go and, grab some drinks. Oh, mambabae tayo, mang chicks tayo. I was like, hindi pare, magko-code ako ngayong gabi. And man, we were fighting because he really wanted to go out. I was like, "No, sorry, bro." And my main motivation back then was really, kung iinom ako ngayon or bukas, I will learn a lot or something like that. Like, what weighs more, my future value or my current, I have fun tonight? And it's always my future value that, that I always prioritize. Even today, when I already started reaping the benefits, or the what I planted years ago, I've already, I'm reaping that. I'm still planting for tomorrow, I would guess. Any tips for prepare a life of being a professional developer? I guess everything that I've mentioned earlier. Spend a lot of time, have side projects. It's not easy, to be honest. Like, you will be drained. Sometimes you'll have mental problems. What am I doing with my life? I'm working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, and I'm earning this much. Like, ito lang yung kinikita ko, tas ito yung trabaho ko. But it's not about that. It's about your growth. And when you get to that point wherein you're already, everything's in your brain, you've downloaded all of the skills in your brain, you can have a lot of value in terms of work and for the company. And I guess the universe will reciprocate that value to you in terms of monetary, like financially. How do you deal with intimidation towards new technologies? How about working consistently outside school hours? Okay, so intimidation with new technologies, you just have to face it. I guess, like, you just have to realize that you gotta start somewhere. When I was starting out, I don't understand it, like, you don't understand anything, right? But you just have to keep it doing it day in, day out, day in, day out. And eventually, once you pass that point, you have enough knowledge in your brain that will go away. So I'm not sure if you've seen this image wherein there is this miner, he's mining, for some gold, and then, like, 1 inch away from the gold mine, he said he quit and he just went away. But there's this one guy, like, he just drive through it and he got all of the gold. So just do not quit. There's this song that I learned in high school. It's a poem song. It's called "Don't Quit," and it has this statement says, "Rest if you must, but don't you quit." So look this up. I couldn't remember all of the lyrics, but I learned this when I was in CAT. We would do jogging for 2 hours a day during training, and you're very tired. You just want to go home. You don't want to do this anymore. But once you constantly remind yourself, the pain that you are having right now, this is just temporary, and everything's in the brain. You can control your mind. Rest if you must, but don't you quit. Yeah.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would like to add a bit like with that yeah, I guess for those who asked it, I guess just go with it. I can totally relate to that experience of just doing it. But yeah, Zorix, do you want to
Yeah.
ask another question?
I think we can only accommodate 2 more questions because we are almost time is almost up. So I'm looking at the YouTube chat. I guess this is not a question, just a reminder from Mr. Valdez again. It's about the principle of being lazy. He said that the lazy is good, but don't tell non-techies that. I mean, he said that it's his like earlier mistakes that he said to a non-techie. Yeah.
Yeah. They won't understand the concept,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, it's a different concept,
All right.
right? Do you have more questions?
I guess for one last question, I think before we proceed to the end. So I think this is a question from Bash actually. Though you can answer if you think it's okay to answer.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I guess his question was, what is the expected salary range at your level based
Okay.
on what you know or experience?
All right. Um for someone with 10 years solid experience or more, I don't want to say the exact amount, but again, I have side projects, right? So one project might not be too big, but if you add up the side projects, that's when if you're good at something, you can complete the work that's required. Like 8 hours of work you can do in 5 hours if you're really very effective or something like that. So you have lots of projects you can work on. Let's just say I make more than the president of the Philippines. Let's just put it at that.
Cool. But yeah, I guess I would just if there's any other questions for Mr. Ivan, I think we can just answer it later or through
Yeah.
another means. Do you have like another area that they can answer your questions or they can
Yeah,
answer their questions?
shoot me an email. I can type my email in the chat, or hit me up on Facebook.
All right,
Alright.
cool.
Yeah.
But
Ivan,
yeah, go Zorks.
yeah. Do you have any announcements to say to the participants or?
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity to talk, and hopefully you guys learned a thing or a few from me. Um, yeah, I haven't done this kind of thing in a while, and I hope the participants learned a thing or two, or even motivated you. Maybe like hopefully next week you'll be more motivated to work and continue your studies or whatever. Um, just I guess a final note for me is that whatever you're doing, just keep focusing on it and just don't stop. Don't quit.
Right.
All right, cool. So yeah, so I think that's the announcement for Ivan, or what he wanted to say to the our participants. But yeah, I have something to say then as well as an announcement. So I have two announcements to make actually. So one is about our sponsor and one about our coding challenge, which will be where we'll be giving the prize. Right. So first, I would like to state our sponsor, which is Swarm. Swarm is an invite-only community where top-tier builders ideate, strategize, and team up for high-quality freelance projects. Join the waitlist. I recommend you join the waitlist via swarm.work to get access to their Swarms Builder and Founder Network community events and more. If you want to team up, especially with high-quality freelance projects with top-tier builders, they're opening up exclusive slots for Swarm Verified. Verified Swarmies get exclusively access to their corrected project marketplace, community of vetted talents, exclusive events, and more. Apply now at swarm.work verified. Yeah, that's
All
it
right.
for my announcement.
So here's the instructions for the coding challenge. It's um can you see my screen? Yeah, so I recommend you you try this out. It's just an easy challenge. The challenge is it has key concepts of functions, if statements, and booleans. So and here's the code snippet. I'm gonna type it in the chat. Oopsie. So how to submit your answer to the challenge? Just place your solution in GitHub gist, then tweet it by Twitter and mention Python PH and Swarmwork. And again, the prize is the first one to submit the correct solution will win a book of his or her choice worth 1,000 or less from Fully Book Online, courtesy of our sponsor, Swarm. Yep. So did you get the Bitly link?
Yeah, so hopefully you register with this or you get to this link so that you may try our coding challenge for this reference. Do you have something else to say, Zorix? Or
All good.
all right. So I think that's it for today. So thank you everyone for those who participated in our episode for Work from Home Pythonista. Again, thank you so much, Ivan, and all the participants for joining us. Hopefully, Ivan, you had fun talking with the participants that we had today, and hopefully, the participants as well enjoyed the awesome topics and the different things you shared us with us today. So yeah, all I can say is see you at everyone at the next episode of Work from Home Pythonista, and happy weekend to all of you. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks. Have a great
Bye.
weekend.